Hello and welcome to the SPAW's live Q&A session with Michele Allen of Monkey's House, a sanctuary for senior dogs. My name is Lori Johnston. I'm with Allied Exchange, and I will be your monitor this evening for this Q&A session. We have our panelist, Carrie, Hyde, owner of the SPAW, with us. And then, of course,
hi, everybody.
Our guest of honor, Michele Allen. And would you like to say a couple of words, Carrie, before I go through house cleaning?
Yes. So I just want to, welcome everybody, of course, to this conversation we're going to be having about senior pets and the best ways we can take care of them and what to do. If you didn't get a chance to listen to the full interview that I did with Michele from Monkey's House, just to kind of recap it a little bit, the Spawdcast did an interview with Michele that aired this past week, and we discussed, what happens when we go through getting to that point in life with our dogs where they're going to be passing and how we take care of them in their older ages, and also things that we can do to help alleviate some of the senior problems that they have. Michele was able to help us out with that a little bit. If you don't know, I own a boarding and daycare facility in Orange County, California, and we deal with a lot of senior pets as well. So, from grooming to boarding them to hospice is something that is very dear to my heart. So that's why I brought Michele on, on the podcast, so that we could have that conversation and open it up so people had more resources, because as Michele mentioned, and I'm sure she's going to continue to talk about, is that there really aren't the resources that we need for these elderly pets. So that's why Michele is here. She's here to help you with your senior pets. I am also here as well as backup if you need any answers for anything. I'm here too. So, but anyway, I just like to say thank you to Michele for being here again, helping with these senior pets, not just the ones in your home, but being able to educate other people who want to take care of their senior pets. So you're reaching pretty far and wide, Michele. So thank you.
Thank you much for this opportunity. That's my dream, is to reach far and wide, to help more than just the dogs that I have my hands on, because there are too many. There are too many that need help. And if we can make this better for other people going through this process, I'm so thrilled, so thrilled.
Yeah. Wonderful. Welcome, both of you. Quick little housekeeping for our attendees. At the bottom of your webinar screen, there is a box that's Q&A. This is where you can post your questions, write your questions in there. I will read them off for Michele to answer for you. You may also use the chat for any of your questions during our session as well. The session is recorded, and it will be posted after the fact, but we are live right now. So there is also a little icon for raising your hand. So if you really need a question answered or have something to say, you can always click this raise your hand. It will appear by your name. And if we're able to, I can allow you to speak with Michele and then put you back into an attending mode. So that is the house cleaning we have. And with that, I would like to kick us off with introduction, Michele, if you don't mind. And then we actually received some questions from Sharon Anderson earlier today. And so we're going to kick off with one of the first questions. How do you decide which dogs to help?
Well, it depends on if we have space at the moment. And from there, the dogs we help are in shelters, or they are already in other rescues and they were found to be hospice dogs, and their foster may not want the hospice experience. So if we have space, and there aren't cages here, everyone's loose, but if we have room and the dog sounds like they're going to be a good match with the personalities and the handicaps that we have here, then we find out what's wrong with the dog and we bring them in.
So I'm gonna just help out a little bit for people who might not completely know. Michele goes to you go to rescues, or I mean the pounds, which I guess is an old way of saying it, but to the shelters, and that is where you get home. People can't bring the animals to Michele. So when someone asks, how do you determine, how do you choose which ones you get? That's what we're talking about. This isn't just Michele's senior dogs that she takes care of, and she takes them from shelters. Michele, how come you don't take them from owners? I know that you get a lot of requests that people want to hand over their senior dogs to you that they can't take care of. How come you don't do that?
There's a few reasons. One, I think that sends a very dangerous precedence to the world that elderly are disposable, and we're all getting older. And, when I was a registered nurse, back when DNR statuses were just new and people were starting to talk, families would always say, mom held on to that dog. It stunk, but she believed life was worth living, and she kept that dog. I think families they enjoyed them when they were young and fun, and they need to embrace their older age. And I have troubles. People don't really want to talk about hospice or end of life. And the thing that's so sad about that is how can it go the way you want? How can you do it without regret if you haven't talked about it, if you haven't heard someone else talk about it? And if someone just says, oh my goodness, my dog got diabetes and that was the worst thing that ever happened, my life was ruined after that, how can you have a positive experience with a diabetic dog if that's your only experience with it? Life changes, you adjust to new normals, but the senior dogs, the hospice dogs, bring an incredible amount to our lives. They're very fulfilling. I can speak for myself, my husband, and all of our volunteers. We love them all to bits, and we bring them in because they're sick, because they meet the criteria of being terminal, not because they're the cutest or the most fun or the best smoochers or the best snugglers. That just all happens by accident.
I think I have the image of going, to the pound, and how hard must that be? You can't take them all.
No, you can't. They contact me. And from there, I speak to volunteers, and I have a friend from another rescue, Kim from Tiny Paws. She's generally on site at the different shelter, at the shelter we pull from the most. And I'll ask her what she knows about the dog. And when I say it depends on our population here, the best thing I can say is if we have too many blind dogs and too many arthritic dogs, blind dogs bump into things and arthritic dogs can't get up fast. So if you don't have a place where it's safe for the arthritic dogs to chill out, and the blind dogs are bumping into them, that's not harmony, and that's not a good environment. So I try to see how things are going, and figure out if the dog will fit into the current mix. And our current mix changes. Sometimes it'll seem like we have a whole bunch of big dogs. Sometimes it seems like we have a whole lot of little dogs. It's just, it ebbs and flows.
So may I, there was another question that was sent ahead of time as well, which was, what things on your wish list are most needed, but may not be provided?
Our wish list, people are always asking me if it's up to date, because it'll say that I posted something in November of 2015. And the fact is, we use that product and we still use it. It's 6 years later, it stood the test of time and met our needs. So our wish list is usually up to date, and it allows us to prioritize. So I may say that I need 20 of something, and then it'll tell you that I have 1. And it'll let me prioritize highest to lowest in need. But things like floor cleaner are not as popular as dog treats.
Is this list on your website?
There's a link to it. It's an Amazon wish list.
Very
and there's
good.
a link to it on our website.
Okay.
So people buy, you're saying you get more dog biscuits than floor cleaner?
Yes, and I'm super choosy about what we give as dog treats. We have dogs, it seems like dogs that have multiple health issues have food sensitivities. I'm not speaking as an expert in the world, I'm speaking as an expert at Monkey's House. And so I'm careful about where stuff is sourced from and what's in it. So I usually, I ask that everything that is edible come from the wish list. If it's not, if we don't have a dog that can use it, I'll pass it on to like Tiny Paws, to another rescue that we work with that has healthy dogs that can eat more diverse foods.
That's
Right.
good to know. It doesn't.
So we have a couple of questions in the chat or in the Q&A, if I may. I know you currently have between 20 and 30 dogs at any given time. Do you ever think about someone expanding so that you could take in more dogs, or somehow expanding, excuse me, and that comes to us from Joyce?
We have been asked that many times. We work out of our house, and my husband and I staff it 24/7. We couldn't afford, like there's an empty elementary school. I mean, how cool would it be to take that over? But we can't afford to staff it. We aren't paid, and we can't let the animals have less care. So for us, we handle what we can here. And when we can have dogs in forever foster situations, and those are volunteers that are familiar with what we do and realize that this is an end of life dog and are still willing to take them for therapy appointments, to feed them food that they may not choose to feed their other dogs, feed them. Our dogs come with a big cooler of raw food and a bag of supplements that are handwritten on the top, how many scoops, how many times a day. It's a little bit more work, but the quality of life is much improved by simple changes.
So real quick, you mentioned your husband. I have to know, when you got married, were you, I know but yeah, you know where I'm going with this. So did he have any idea, or is this part, because I know my husband had no idea what he was getting into when it came to this.
Yeah.
So did he know?
So I have been a horse enthusiast my whole life, and I listed my horses and my dogs as a pre-existing condition that was non-negotiable. And, you know, he just kind of rolled his eyes. So no, he didn't know. He didn't know. And this evolved. I had been planning this consciously, talking to people, walking around, planning this since 2010. And he had been not listening to me. And I'm grateful to all of my friends who I spoke to about this that were still my friends, because it really does sound like an insane kind of a plan. But it took 5 years of soul searching, questioning, taking courses, working with a trainer, doing all kinds of things, working with Dr. Morgan, learning about food therapy. It took a lot of experiences and fostering a lot of very sick dogs and end of life dogs through other organizations before all of this pulled together.
So real quick, when Michele says Dr. Morgan, she's talking about Dr. Judy Morgan, who is one of the veterinarians that we both love so much, that helps with diet and understanding, which we're going to get into, of course, because I don't think that you can take care of a senior pet without at least providing them good nutrition. And good nutrition, unfortunately, does not mean what most people think it means. You know, there's such a variation in what people think nutrition is. I just real quick saw those Nextdoor apps, and somebody had posted on one of the Nextdoor apps, what to feed her 10-week-old puppy. And of course, the variation of what nutrition is was astounding to me, because they're so very, very different, from kibble to home cooked to raw. There's so much going on. So I'm just, before we go too far into this, I just want to ask you a quick question about how I know I've seen the videos, everybody hasn't, but what does feeding time at your house look like?
The food is prepped in advance. So if it needs to be cooked, it's cooked the day before, the week before. Everything is thawed to room temperature. probably heated as needed. We have about an 8-foot long countertop with all of the dog's names on there and a quick hit list of what their diets are. And then a bowl with their name on it, because once that bowl sits where their name was, you don't see that name anymore. From there, they're very individualized diets. It'll be like, I'll provide cooked turkey for like 3 dogs, and then they get extra different supplements in that. Some stuff will be raw. A good part of it will be raw. Some is DIY because of very special diet needs. Some kidney failure dogs that are in advanced stages that need stuff. And it's a very organized time during the day. It takes about 2 hours for each meal. And I look at it like a treatment, just like you would go to therapy or you would go to your vet. This is a treatment here, and I take it very seriously.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. I know I'm going to let everybody get their questions in, but it's so important to me as a nutritionist that people understand food is a treatment. Everything that goes into your pet's mouth should be put in their mouth for the purposes of health, not because it maybe tastes good or because it's convenient or because it's, it should have some value to it. And you have to be very careful of that, right? Because a brownie has some vitamins and minerals in it. And people want to say that those things are nutritious, but we have to be really careful. So I just wanted to make sure that we kind of touched on exactly nutrition and how important that is for all pets, but in particularly our senior pets. So many people, Michele, talk about how, well, we just had a lady the other night, her dog already has cancer and is old, and is it worth it to change the diet onto a raw diet now? What would your answer have been to that?
Heck yes, that's what I do. When the dogs are left in the shelter and they're getting ready to put them down, they have gigantic masses on them. We had one dog that had a 14.5-pound basketball on her side. She lived vibrantly for 19 months. Now we removed the mass. She had 3 types of cancer. We put her in ketosis. We did a lot with Chinese herbs. We did a lot with exercise, and vibrant 19 months. And you would have looked at her and said, "Wow, this is too late." It's not too late. It's not too late.
Yeah, no matter how old your dog.
Go ahead, Carrie, sorry.
No, that's okay. Go ahead. Next question.
Yeah, that actually leads into one of the other questions that we have, and we have about 5 of them that we need that we'll go through. But does Monkey's House pay for the vet care, or is it donated? Was one of the questions.
We do pay for exams, for surgeries, for all of that stuff. It's most of our providers give us a discount. Our main vet, Dr. Knight, she's just incredible to us. So if I bring a dog to the office, she'll charge us an office charge and give us a discount. But I spend more time with her off hours saying, "Oh my goodness, she does not charge me for that." And she's she's creative. She's good. She's got a good instinct, and she's a great friend. And you really can't do something like this without a vet or 2 or 6 in your corner. But Dr. Knight she's just incredible to us.
Of course, wonderful. Our next question that came from Candy is, what is the story behind the name Monkey's House? Where did it come from?
Well, during the 5 years that I was walking around mumbling that I wanted to do this, one of the dogs we were asked to take for Forever Foster was a little tiny 13-pound guy. He might have been 17 pounds. His name was Monkey. He was kind of an orangish color. He looked a little bit like a Frenchie Chihuahua mix, but no one really knows what he was. And he was pretty sick when he came, and his respirations were in the 80s. He was in congestive heart failure. And I went to the shelter vet and I asked for some scripts that I was going to get filled at the pharmacy. He said, "No, he's a shelter dog. Just enjoy him for a week, for 2, maybe 3 weeks. Just enjoy him and don't do that." and that pushes my buttons. So we adopted him, and he had all of the specialists and the medication that he needed. But he stole our hearts. It was like he came here to steal our hearts. Like if you were like if you were sitting on a bench with all of your money asking to be robbed, we were like sitting there with our hearts out, waiting to have them stolen. And he rocked our world every single day. He bit all of our friends. He was not a dog that was for everybody, but for us, he was just the coolest thing ever. And finishing up the finals, well, there was many final stages to getting Monkey's House started, but losing him, we knew the whole time that time was precious. We had 17 months with him, but the grief was drowning. It really felt like I was stuck underwater and I couldn't breathe. And I couldn't let that end. I couldn't let my plans come to an end. I was so close to sort of getting my act together. And I didn't want the rest of the world to not know how special he was. So I just did a Facebook page, and I don't really know what I'm doing on Facebook. I had the settings on private. I just called it Monkey's House. I didn't discuss it with Jeff. And I put some pictures up, and I came up with a mission statement, all like in 10 minutes, and showed it to my husband, and he was on board with it. And then I shared it with our vet, and she was on board with it, although she didn't think I would get it off the ground. So I might have got her in again unwillingly, but
That's great.
It just took off from there. But doing something positive with your grief, whether it's a memorial, whether it's planting a tree, whether it's donating a plaque to a shelter, whether it's donating to a rescue that needs to have an ultrasound for a dog and your dog had needed an ultrasound, helping a neighbor who has a sick dog, doing something positive with your grief is the best way to move forward and to honor them. It really is.
Yeah, I agree.
Great. So our next question comes from Lynn. Who makes or made the determination that the dog is terminal?
So
That's a good question.
it's an amazing question. And let me tell you, it's not me, and I think it's God. We'll just say God. So if a dog is blind and in congestive heart failure, has a grade 4 murmur, has kidney disease, if they have those 3 things, we'll take them. What I found is that kidney disease in the earlier stages is not terminal. We had a dog that came in stage 2 kidney disease, and he was with us for 4 years and died from complications of a brain tumor. He also had congestive heart failure. He was also deaf and blind, and he had an amazing life. So terminal, I think terminal is more in our mind. We have labels for diseases, and it helps to know that they have these diseases, but I also don't consider them terminal until they're not eating anymore and we can't get them to eat, or I'm just down the hatching the pills they need to make it through the day and breathe well. That's when they're really terminal. Until then, they're going to the beach.
That's awesome.
That's our plan.
Absolutely.
We have fun.
Our next question comes from Candy. What are the top 5 tips on how to take care of an elderly dog, or best practices to do for elderly dogs?
So help me count to 5.
Carrie?
So I think the most important thing to start with is to have a vet that you can ask questions to. Instead of going to the vet and spending a ton of money and then going on Facebook and asking strangers, ask your vet. And if your vet says it in a way that you don't understand, say, I don't understand. I still don't get it. Why did this work for my friend's dog and you're saying it won't work for mine? Why is the new broccoli diet supposed to be so good for cancer and you're not recommending it for mine? Be able to talk to your vet about the good things and the bad things, because you need someone to turn to, and really a qualified, educated professional is the person you need in your corner. So I would say that's my first thing. My second thing is diet. And they may have eaten raw all their life, and now their body just can't handle it. You need to lightly cook. If they're having more digestive problems, they may never have had a food sensitivity in their life, and now they do. Find out what it is. And just taking away one contributing factor to something can take a dog that has diarrhea 3 times a day to normal stuff, and their weight improves, their condition improves. So really, really be fastidious with their diet. See, the next thing is don't be afraid to change your home around. If you have a $5,000 Persian rug in your dining room, either put up a gate or roll up the rug. Don't be afraid to have ramps built. Don't be afraid to sleep on the floor or put your mattress on the floor. Do things. The easier it is for you to enjoy your dog, the easier it is for your dog to enjoy you. And it makes the whole journey much easier. It really does.
Yeah,
Oh,
I would say
pee pads everywhere.
pee pads everywhere. I would also say, you do this, but outdoor activities, I think, are getting these animals outdoors where they belong, really. I mean, they're nature, they're creatures of nature. They need the outdoors just as much as we do. Get grounded, get their feet in the the soil and the dirt and the wind and the sand. And
yes, interacting with them, like I always tell people, change their diet and take them for a walk. And then I say, we're not marathoners. Like, the driveway is just like 440 feet. It's out to the mailbox and back a few times a day. But really, the more you can engage with them, the more you can get them to smell, or give them a snuffle mat or a food puzzle, or like you're saying, hide the food outside. The more you can engage with them, the more they come out of their shell. And it really does bring them back to life.
it really does, because you think about, even from a human standpoint, you take a senior citizen and lock them away in their house and they never experience life, they're going to give up a lot quicker than if they're outdoors and doing stuff. And it doesn't have to be, like you said, Michelle, it doesn't have to be a marathon walk. It shouldn't be if you have an older dog who can't do it. And if that means a stroller, right? Getting outside, stimulating their mind. I run a doggy daycare, and I can't tell you how many times people, they want to do it with their puppies, but as soon as they become a senior, they just say, oh, he doesn't need anymore because he just sits on the couch. And it breaks my heart, because I think, well, you just sped up what is already really rapid is their lifespan. And I think when we expect them just to lay on the couch and do nothing is unfortunate. It's unfortunate.
We do field trips. So the walking up and down the driveway is all day, every day. But we do field trips with our volunteers, and our volunteers are pretty great. So we arrive at the beach with a bus, and I'll unload a dog, a big dog that's in a wagon, and I'll just say, he's having troubles walking. His name is Joey. He's never been to the ocean, and off they go. And I'll say, most of the volunteers know the dogs, know who shouldn't be near who. But if someone's having a hard heart day, I'll either walk them, or I'll say, listen, make sure they don't start to pant, make sure they don't do this. And our volunteers take the dogs with all the parts that work and all the parts that don't work, and have an awesome time. And you wouldn't know if you were a drone overhead of us, you wouldn't say, oh, look at that dog. Look at that dog in heart failure. Look at that dog in kidney failure. Look at that dog whose whole spine is one big, huge chunk of glue. You wouldn't see that above us. You'd see a lot of adults that are acting like teenagers, having fun with some middle-aged dogs. They bring out the best in us.
I love the seniors.
Me
I
too.
love them.
Me too.
So we have a few more questions, if I may. This one comes from Lynn. Do you have a requirement that a dog has only X number of months remaining, or is this open?
So what we found, things that I thought were terminal in 2015, are not terminal. So congestive heart failure may not be terminal. So I go by my best guess. And I don't consider it a failure if a dog is only with us for 2 years. I'm sorry, for 2 months. If they're with us for 4 years, I question, did I make the right choice? And the 2 of them that have been with us for a long time, my answer is hell yes. And the stories I could tell you about the things that sounded fatal and turned out we were able to work our way through. And I have the luxury. I was a nurse and I would be gone for 13 hours a day. Now, this is what I do, and I do it 24/7, and sometimes it is 24 hours a day. That I don't have to worry if a dog is having seizures. I don't have to worry about it being alone the next day. I don't have to worry. My job is to get the seizures stopped and to keep the dog quiet and relaxed. And I'm able to focus on just that. And before COVID, I could put the call out to help to our volunteers and say, hey, somebody is having issues. I'll be in the bathroom all day with so-and-so. Could someone else come and help with some other dogs? And volunteers were always quick to come if I sent out the SOS. Right now we have fewer dogs because of COVID. I'm not going to let the standard of care drop for the ones that we have. So that's what we're doing right now.
So I quickly wanted to ask you, I think you said 4 years, but it wasn't an informative question, but what's the long, like, I know you take the terminal dogs and then you change their diet. So I know that that's going to help. What's the longest, you thought they might pass away in a year or 6 months and then what's the longest a dog has gone? Is it 4 years?
We've had dogs that have been here 5 or 5.5 years and they're still with us. But what you're told as a brain tumor back then is they get better and worse. And I would say the dog that was 4 years and 2 months, blind, deaf, congestive heart failure, pulmonary hypertension, his kidneys were compromised. He had cancer. He didn't have that many teeth. And he was the happiest little guy in the world. He lived well, and he taught me to stop listing stuff, be aware of it. If his respirations are over 30, I need to address that. But that's not the burden he's carrying. He wants to go out potty. He wants to go pee on everything he can find. He would, and at the end of his days, he would lift his back leg up so fast and so high that he would lose his balance to pee. Well, that's enthusiasm. I'm talking about Buck for those that remember him. And it was just it didn't matter. Like every time something else was listed as wrong, oh my goodness, they have all this and now they found a brain tumor. Doesn't matter. It's still him. He's still happy. We're still going. That's just how we faced it.
That's awesome.
We have another question, a few of them, from Bonnie. Are any of the diabetic dogs treated with Chinese herbs rather than insulin?
No. Our dogs that are diabetic do receive insulin. I do have them on Chinese herbs, and I do have them on, I'm sorry, it's a supplement. I'll come back. It's leaving my head at the moment. But I've never been able to control diabetes without the use of insulin. I have taken dogs that were on 46 units of insulin down twice a day, down to like 6 units twice a day. I had one dog that came here blind, completely blind, insulin dependent, emaciated, and we were able to, I didn't restore her sight. Her sight came back for quite a while. And I think that was from controlled sugars, which are so easy to do when you know what's going in their diet, when you don't have to look up words that sound like they're okay and aren't. When you're putting the ingredients in there, you know what they're getting.
That's why I had to change my store around a few years back, because I just got tired of trying to chase down what everything was. It would change, and you would hear from the vets that it's complete and balanced, and you need to have this complete and balanced. But I just gave up. I said, I'm so tired of this. I'm going to figure out what's in this food, and that's when I switched my store around. So I always encourage, and I also have worked with quite a few clients with diabetes and have not been able to get anybody off of insulin, but definitely massively reduced the amount of insulin that, and the energy and the life that is brought back into these diabetic animals, that you reduce that insulin and then feed them a proper diet. Oh my gosh, night and day, night and day.
Night and day, their quality, their vibrance, they're amazing. They're amazing.
Yeah.
Our next question comes from Candy. It says, how do you feel about flea medication for dogs that health is compromised? And if not, how do you manage fleas when taking dogs outside? And actually, I guess this question could actually be for both of you, Carrie and Michele. So I think it'd be great to hear from both of you on that one for sure.
Go ahead, Michele.
So I use herbal natural flea products. I spray them on their beds. I spray them in the house. I spray the dogs that are going to go for the longer walks. I spray the dogs that are going to be out longer at dusk or at dawn. But for the most part, it's not a problem. I saw a flea here in the fall, I think 2 years ago. It was a Sunday, and I saw a flea. And so the drill is the dogs all get a bath, everything goes in the laundry, and we vacuum the house like crazy. And I think the volunteers thought that I was just having like the fall cleaning done that day. Like everyone pitched in, everyone pitched in. But for the most part, I don't use that kind of, I don't use the harsher chemicals because it's not going to help the dogs that have sensitivities, and it's going to take more energy from their body to fight off those chemicals than I want to do.
It's interesting because I just did an interview. It hasn't aired yet, but I just did an interview with a wolf expert, and his will air very soon. And he had commented that when they have to get the wolves and then track them so they can do the research. And he says they'll have thousands of ticks on them, thousands sometimes, just all over them. But he says they've never had one once have Lyme disease. So it's interesting to me. And so, of course, that brought me back to diet and nature taking care of itself, because I tend to do that a lot because of my background. But I have found that in my own dogs, and I probably see 50 to 60 dogs a day that aren't mine. They're coming and going. But I definitely noticed that the dogs who are on the right diets don't have the same issues. So if you have a pet who is eating a poor diet and is over vaccinated and over medicated and just kind of not a healthy animal, I would say that the natural stuff may not work for you, because it isn't super, super strong, and it can't just be put on one day and then forgotten about for 30 days, or now they have the 3 months. So I think that you need to merge those two things together. Your pet needs to be eating healthy so his immune system can handle that. Because my own personal dogs, I don't even use the natural stuff. I don't use anything at all. I check them. Don't get me wrong. I have a golden retriever and I have a Havanese, and I check them, but I just have never, they're 8 and 9. I've never had a flea problem, but they eat a species appropriate diet. So that's my take on it.
Okay,
people ask me all the time when they're looking, they'll say, oh, you're holistic. What do you do about this? Or what do you, and then they'll say, well, that's a lot of work. Doing alternative stuff is not cheaper, and it's not easier. If anything, it's harder.
Yeah. But
it's worth it. It's so worth it.
Yeah. I just wonder though, because people say that to me too. Oh, that seems like a lot of work. But I have dogs that I know of right now that are going back and forth to the vet every month. I mean, they're constantly, they got to make the vet appointment, then they got to go, then they got to get the medication, then they got to give the medication. There's so much. And I just think, well, I mean, I just make sure my pets eat healthy, and they don't ever, it's not more work to me. I don't have to go to the vet ever. I don't have to, I know we're talking about senior pets, but you have to start here so that your senior pets don't end up where you have to backtrack, right? Where you have to go backwards. and try to fix the problems. That's harder. When you try to fix the problems that you create is so much harder to me than, not to mention the guilt that can go on top of you that you didn't, take that time. So I think once you get into a routine of it, when I first started feeding raw, I thought, oh my God, I can't, and I did like everybody did. I did, this kibble's better than this kibble. I did that for a few years. Right? And we're going back 20 years. This kibble's better than that kibble. And okay, well then I'll take this kibble and add a little bit of this. And eventually I figured it out. And now it's really not hard once you get into a routine. And of course, we're not all like you, Michele. We don't have a bunch of sick animals to take care of. So I don't want to say it's not hard, but I think once you get into the routine and you commit to it, it's actually pretty easy.
You get comfortable with your resources and your backup plans. I always tell people I was a traditionally educated registered nurse. And what that means is that if I was speaking now to me in 1985, I would say that woman is insane. Please feel bad for her. And for me, when your dog is in, this was before COVID, but if your dog is in the emergency room, they leave you in the waiting area, and the dog would be in the back, and then they bring you in the back and they say, your dog is done for. It's time. And you just think, how did this happen? How did I come to this? What could I have done? What could I have changed? And that happened enough that when someone said, start doing this, start doing that, I started doing it. And actually, I had met Dr. Morgan she was just doing a seminar, and a lot of the stuff she said made sense. And she had a lot of backup plans for if you have a counter surfer that eats all the turkey. She says, do you have eggs in your house? Do you have sardines in your house? You've got a meal. She was able to come up with practical stuff. So I booked a consult for 3 of our dogs. And I brought 3 because at that point, I thought her office was far away. It was an hour. Little did I know I'd be going there fairly regularly eventually. But the appointment was just random. And it had been at a time when Monkey, who had tremendous amount of advanced heart disease, he became very reclusive and was spending a lot of time up in our closet in the master bedroom. And I took him to our vet and I said, what's going on? I don't understand this. And I remember bringing him in, and he had bitten me on the back of my hand, and the blood was just like a slow, steady drip. And she said, do you want something for your hand? And I'm like, oh, a paper towel. But I didn't know it was wrong. I didn't know if he was like a human and was afraid, if he was having chest pains. I just didn't know. And she did a really good physical. She did his blood work, and everything was fine. She said, don't take in any new dogs for a while. And if he's still like this in a week, have the behaviors come out. And in that time span, I ended up with my nutrition consult with Dr. Morgan, who, if you've ever done a consult with Dr. Morgan, she wants all of your records there in advance. And she knew all 3 of my dogs' names as they walked in the door because she'd been through the records. And with Monkey, I had him on a raw diet. But then one of my horses got sick. And our animals have always been old. They're not insurable. So we had a little bit of a nest egg put away for emergencies. And my horse was very sick, and we burned through the whole nest egg and continued going. So in good faith, I was trying to save money other places, and I switched Monkey back to kibble. And this was about a month before he started having these changes. And Dr. Morgan said, what happened in May? And I burst into tears. Oh, my horse died. It was just like I was a wreck. It was like a therapy session. And she explained to me from the Chinese medicine standpoint how what was going on with his heart was too drying for his mind. And she said it better than that. But anyway, my homework was sardines, hard-boiled eggs, and beef heart. Now, the registered nurse in me would say, how much money did you just pay to get told to do that? The dog mom in me says that Monkey was back to normal in 3 days.
Wow.
And that as I learned more about what she was talking about, I started to understand when she would give you a strange food to track down, I would understand why. And it just all started coming together. And it's been stuff that I've been able to repeat time and time again with the dogs that are here. And so it's made such a shift in my life that, like I said, from a traditional education to here, I don't know what happened, but I'm sure glad it did. I'm sure
Yeah.
glad it
So, so
I-
we
I
have,
hope-
oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Lori. No, go ahead.
We are coming up to time, but we have 3 more questions to go through. If you, actually, there's 2 more from Lynn, but I think they're kind of combined because one is, how do you medicate all those dogs? And then the next one was, what about vaccines? Do you discontinue? So I'm going to put those together as this next question.
So the dogs all have the individual pill sleeves that say Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and they have an AM and a PM. Some of the dogs, I can put it in their food and mix it in and they'll eat it. Some of the dogs need it in a treat. Some of the dogs have to be pilled. There's eye drops, ear drops, insulin. It's just part of the morning routine. As far as shots are concerned, the shelter gives them everything that you could ever imagine. I could take these dogs around the world and they'd be immunized for everything. So if there's a problem, we always can titer, but before we bring any dogs from the shelter to our house, they spend 2 weeks in quarantine offsite with another foster family. So we're not worried about the common thing. So we don't immunize any further.
Okay, thank you. And then we have a question from Rob, and he says, I live in Burlington County and wanted to know if you know of any rescues who try to place senior dogs. Maybe they determine their overall health and fix dental before they are up for adoption.
Yes, I know several that do that. I'm gonna, of course, say my friends at Tiny Paws do that all the time. They're not in Burlington County or Camden County, but I mean, they cover that area. Jay and Company does. If they don't cover the dental, they'll tell them the dog needs the dental. Sometimes they'll arrange it to be with their vet so that it can be at a discounted rate, but they're very reputable.
Okay. So the last question I think that we have on is, what kind of equipment will we need to start a doggy rest home in our community if somebody wanted to start something like that? And that was one that had come from Sharon.
Okay. The first thing you need is a frame for a certificate from the county or your township saying that it's okay to do that. So you need permission to make sure that it's okay. From there, you need to make sure that you have suitable flooring. We're all vinyl and linoleum here. Ramps. We have some very big freezers. We have 3 freezers and a gigantic one that was donated to us by 40 Below. And trying to think what else. You need a sizable amount of money to get started because you bring home sick dogs and they need vet care and they need medication. Trying to think, besides that, like syringes, that kind of thing. That's all that's coming in off the top of my head. Over time, we have needed, we changed our garage around. Our garage, and we have 2 rooms on the other side that we ended up installing HVAC in to make them inhabitable for daily use. And we've put in a sink that goes up and down for washing dogs. So our dogs that are paralyzed, it's been a godsend. It's been a total godsend. We have some dogs that are blind and deaf and they're low riders and they're just attracted to a dirty pee pad. So they need baths all the time. So that's been a back saver for me, for all of the volunteers as well. So I think it depends on the population that you're bringing in, but I would say the first thing you need is to clear it with your township.
We definitely need more of these. There's just
Yes.
not, it's so heartbreaking to think. I have one now. I took one. I told you about him, Michele. He's a difficult little one. And I'm going to be taking another one. So I'm going to be trying to take 2 because I have enough staff that we can kind of we can do that, and I can supply the food. But you know, it's difficult. Yeah, I think one of the things I would say, just from my experience, is, you know, making sure, like, if you have children in the home, you do need to be careful, because I took Bo in, and even with my employees, you know, he wants to bite all the time. And so you do have to be careful when you have a senior dog, right? Especially seniors, because if they're blind or they're deaf, they get, you know, jarred if you just touch them. If they're asleep, sometimes they can wake up and just bite. So I think you got to be careful. You know, I want more of these to exist, and they need to. I wish that we could get funding for them, and there should be one of these in every county, because unfortunately these no-kill shelters, like we talked about, really aren't so no-kill at all. They find ways to put these poor animals down, I think, before their time.
It's hard. People ask me all the time, you know, are we going to open in Kentucky? Are we going to open in Ohio? We're not a franchise. We aren't paid. We use our house because these dogs deserve a home. And like I said, my husband and I are the full-time. I'm the night kennel manager. I'm also the co-founder. Some glamorous titles and some not so glamorous titles. And I always have poop somewhere on me that, you know, probably shouldn't be there. But the fact is, ours is grassroots. I think that most rescues have at least one person that is willing to do hospice fostering. The problem is that it's a very lonely thing, because you don't go to the meet and greets. Your dogs don't get adopted. You don't talk to the other foster moms about what's going on. It's hard to find another foster to watch your dog while you're on vacation, because they're not familiar with this, or they're concerned about that. And that's what I found before we started Monkey's House. When I would go to the shelter, they'd say, "Oh, thank God you're here." And then they'd say, "I don't know how you do this." And I would say, "Well, this is what and they would be gone. And so I started a Facebook page for anyone that wanted to listen, because it's hard work, but it's not rocket science. And it's so incredibly rewarding. It's so incredibly rewarding. I wouldn't trade it for anything else.
I just want to read something to you. This is actually from a client of mine, and she wrote, "My friends and I are texting each other, and they and I are saying that we love you. You get it. Credible, integrity, so heartwarming, tears in our eyes." So I just wanted to share that with you. That's from, she has a little Yorkie named Chloe, and her name's Candace. So I just think that's how we all feel right now about you and what you do. And I know that your goal is to inspire people to do this, because there are more animals than you can take care of. And so I think it's great. Can people come out? I know with COVID you can't, but when COVID is over, can people come out there and volunteer their time there? I know I tried to do some volunteer work in a different country where you went out there for like a week, and I was interested in some wolf sanctuaries. But do you have anything like that where someone could do their vacation out there?
We're not set up like that. So I'm an amazing dog chef. Like, you would not believe the stuff I could just whip up. But for people, I got nothing. I couldn't have someone come from out of town and stay here. And
No. I don't mean stay there, but let's say they wanted to stay in a hotel and then just come for the week and just take the dogs to the beach and do any kind of volunteer work.
We've talked about that with some of my volunteers, and I have talked about that. There are people that want to visit, and we all have different backgrounds, and I think many of us have had dogs all of our lives, and some people let their dogs loose out the front door and don't worry one single bit. I freak, and if the people aren't running after the dog, I run after the dog, and I use inappropriate words at the people that aren't running after the dog. So I mean, let me tell you, my dogs don't want to leave here, but if they're a beagle, their nose is on the ground, and they're going to get lured off to somewhere just because there's smells there.
Yeah.
So I've tried. I've had good experiences and bad experiences. It's something we're working on.
Yeah.
I had someone that wanted to come from Scotland, and I said, not yet. Someone else that wanted to quit the job and move in with us. I can't. Our house isn't big enough for that. And I used to be a very private person, and I've opened our home to all of our volunteers who are fabulous people, very respectful, don't open the door and let dogs out. And I think that's as far as I can push myself. We lost a dog today that was in foster care that is not good with other animals. And we were going to put up, I'm not for warehousing animals, but we really all felt she was very adoptable. She just needed to be an only dog. And so we were going to put up a special room for her, like a shed that was going to be air conditioned, heated, with a big yard that had a top to it so that my chickens couldn't fly in there and be and we haven't started on this yet, but she passed today. And our plan was, after she got adopted, to use that as a visitor room. And so we're going to go through with that and call it Macy's Place. And it's just going to be, you know, the room and everything that we had worked on to get for her. That will be, you know, we're still trying to figure all of this out. But my goal is to get these dogs out of the shelter. And it makes my days long. It makes my nights sometimes long and sleepless. And I don't want to get sidetracked on what isn't my goal, because I've given my life for this and I need to stay focused. So,
you know, it's interesting you say that. I've been saying that to myself lately, stay in my lane, just stay in my lane. Because when you get sidetracked, then you lose sight. And I see that happen with a lot of people in our world, because it's so easy to get sidetracked and want to do more things and provide more stuff. And I actually opened up a second facility and then closed it a year and a half later, because I realized it was taking me away from what I really want to do. And I used to do dog training, and I stopped because nutrition and providing a great place for dogs to get groomed was where I needed to stay in my lane. So I applaud you for recognizing that. And I think that's the important part about taking animals under our care, is recognizing our limits and recognizing, you know, what we can do for them. And if we get too sidetracked and do too much, we see this in rescue all the time, right? People rescue and they just keep rescuing and rescuing and rescuing. And before you know it, the animals are not being fed. They're laying in their own pee and poop, and they're not being taken care of. So I applaud you for that.
thank you. Yeah, I won't, that's the thing. As hard as it is to say no, as hard as it is to know that I'm the last hope, I can't betray the dogs that are already here. I cannot lower my standards. I just can't. And you never know. A dog, well, right now, I told you beforehand that I might have to run out for a minute with an emergency. And the day before yesterday, this dog is insulin dependent diabetic, blind, but completely stable, sweet. And she got stung. We think she was bit by a spider. And right now my husband is out with her. So she gets one-on-one time the whole time. She's had a few seizures, her blood sugar, we're having trouble keeping her blood sugar up. You don't know when all of your time is going to be occupied by one or two dogs. And, you know, you have to protect, you know, I always say it's them first. That's just a rule that I've developed for my own survival.
That's wonderful. So ladies and our attendees, we are about 1 minute left of our session. And I personally would like to thank all of our attendees for joining, but absolutely amazing session. Michele and Carrie, all of the information and the stories that are shared tonight, I think were inspirational and heartwarming, as some of our guests have mentioned in the chat. So I leave, Michele, if you would like to say anything, final thoughts for our attendees, and then Carrie, you can close us out.
Sure.
Thank you so much for listening. And I know people don't want to talk about hospice or talk about end of life. Thank you for everyone who stepped out of your comfort zone to listen to a little bit about it. If you can change your mindset, you will extend the awesome amount of time you have with your dog.
So I can't say it enough, Michelle. I mean, the first time I saw you on Facebook, I thought, oh, this is somebody I need to reach out to. And I think I put out something, I can't remember, and somehow we connected, but it's so important to me. I see so many old dogs come into my facility that people have kind of given up on, and just here, and it just breaks my heart. So it helps me so much to know that there's people out there like you that are doing this and making a difference. Our pets don't live very long. And so to give up on them, in the last few years of their life it's so sad to me. I'm going to probably start crying as I say it, because I see it so much. I see animals come in all the time that people just, I'm such a baby in my old age.
No, you just
Oh.
feel the feelings so much, that's the thing. You feel those feelings. And, when you can take a dog that's pretty sick, it has a lot of itises and a lot of pills, and you get them well enough to have a dental, you get the infection out of their mouth.
Yeah.
Oh, it looked like Michelle's connection froze, but we are
Well,
at time. So thank you,
all right. Well,
everybody.
we're at time. Thank you, everybody. Sorry, Michelle, we lost you at that last end, but thank you very much. Bye, everybody.
Bye, y'all.
Bye-bye.